Welcome to another edition of One More Light with me, Val Kleinhans. I am super excited for today's episode because I think we're going to get a lot of insight that most people in their lives don't obtain, like ever, unless you've had a specific circumstance like this guy. You know Nick Thompson from season 2 of Love is Blind on Netflix. I brought Nick on because, his experience is definitely one of a kind, but it's also become the catalyst for his own mental health advocacy, which we will dive into today. Nick, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me on, Val.
Yeah, a lot of us are just fascinated by Love is Blind, and we binge each season immediately when it comes out. To viewers, it looks like a fairy tale, but when we saw you on the show, you found love at the time with Danielle, and things look amazing. But that wasn't quite the literal reality of the show. And you've been super open about your experience on it, which I'll say boils down to one word: deprivation. Like, cast members were actually deprived of
Yeah.
so much on the show. So I guess overall, what's the one thing that you would like the public to know from your experience on the show?
I think the first and foremost, people need to realize that what they're watching on Love is Blind or really on any reality show is not an accurate representation of reality. And
Mm,
I think that when you see this story plan out, you have to understand that there is manipulation going on at the highest level from the moment they first start talking to you during the casting process, all the way through the fact that you don't even get to see this show before it airs. So you have no time to prepare. You're given very little resources from them. And then you're subject to public ridicule. You're subject to defamation. You're subject to misrepresentation. And those aren't my words. Those are the words from the contract as a participant agreement in Love is Blind, where they say we can misrepresent you, we can defame you, we can subject you to public ridicule, and you can't do anything about it. So I think when you look at that and you think about editing,
yeah.
you have to remember that what you're seeing is not it's reality entertainment. It's based on actual events. It is not a documentary. It is not reality.
No.
Heavily edited and scripted.
Yeah, I think reality TV in general has been around long enough where some of us are starting to realize this, but some of us do get lost in the glamour of it too. I remember just watching a few of your podcast episodes on YouTube. Guys were,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, just you guys were deprived of food, sleep, water, like,
Basic human needs.
right.
It's basic human needs. They just take them.
That's the behind the scenes stuff that as fans we don't know, or as viewers we don't know. We don't see that part of it. So you're getting this contract and they're honest with you about all the things that you could face, and as you were just explaining a little bit, what made you decide to join the show to begin with?
Well, here's the thing, and I think this is something that everybody should really reflect on before they start, spewing their own issues on people over the internet. When you read this contract, and I read the whole thing, and I had, a piece of it amended for my job, and
Mm,
I feel like people don't really have an understanding of what you're signing up for and what that could actually look like. I know for me, I was like, I'm pretty strong in my conviction. I know my core values. I don't behave outside of my character. And I was open with them, saying like, hey, like, you're not going to get a producer that's going to be able to manipulate me into saying or doing something that I didn't say or do, or that I wouldn't want to say or do in real life. So just so you know, that's what you're getting with me. And you have to
mhm.
decide if that's something that you're looking for. And what you don't realize, though, is when you read that, I say, I'm just going to be myself. I don't do anything out of character. And I didn't get a bad edit by any means, but was I misrepresented in scenes? 100%. Did scenes get edited out of order? Absolutely. Did they show scenes in the pods where I was speaking to one person and they made it look like I was speaking to another person? 100%. Now, when they do that, that's where you really can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
And you watch it back, sometimes you feel like you're getting gaslit because you're like, that didn't happen that way, or I did not say that to that person. or this is completely misrepresenting the reality because they're trying to tell a story. And when you're trying to tell a story or push a narrative, and you have the ability to defame, misrepresent, edit scenes out of order. We just saw that on season 4 with Jackie.
Oh,
They are just completely exposing people who may go in with the best intentions or may not go in with the best intention. But when you misrepresent what someone said or the order in which something happened or who they said it to, you are just completely irresponsible of that person's life, of their mental health, their jobs, and you just have absolutely no recourse going against this, and you have no idea what you're signing up for, because they could have, I'm sure they could have edited me into a villain if they wanted to in some way, shape, or form. And I've seen them do it to other people. I saw them do it to Shayna on our season. I saw them do it to Trisha on our season. I've talked to people that it's happened to on other episodes and or other shows and other seasons. So it is really, and again, what happened with Jackie last year, it's really just a complete irresponsible way to produce entertainment.
yeah, it's it leaves so much open to interpretation that really shouldn't be, because it's just plain not fair.
Yeah,
And we would have no idea if we weren't getting, insight from you, people like you speaking out and explaining it to those of us who are just viewers and really don't
right.
get that behind the scenes look. So I
Well,
have to.
and to add on to that too, really quickly, what I think is very important for viewers to watch is that even if someone behaves in a negative way, does something bad, I think to everything going on with Vanderpump Rules right now,
Oh yeah.
you know, right or wrong, people do things right or wrong every day in their real life. But when you're doing it on TV, whether it be local, whether it be, you know, global like Netflix and Love is Blind is, you have to take a step back and remember these people are human beings first, right? Human beings make mistakes. Human beings say and do stupid things. It doesn't make them not human.
No.
So before you attack people or you think you know someone, just remember to yourself, like, this is a highly scripted, highly edited form of entertainment that is designed to create drama, escalate narratives, and push people in a direction that they want them to go into for
Yeah.
storyline purposes.
Right. The difference is the cameras. I mean, like you were saying, all of us have done things that we're not proud of in life.
Absolutely.
It just happens to be that there's a camera on at that moment in some specific instances. So I'm curious, did you struggle at all with your mental health before Love is Blind, or?
Yeah, I've struggled with my mental health since I was probably 5, 6, or 7 years old. I didn't exactly know what it was or what was going on until I was much older. It wasn't something that I talked about or really learned about. I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school, so everything was trust in God. God has a plan for you. Blah blah blah. We all know the drill on that, and that's no anybody's faith. I'm fully in I fully believe everybody has the right to practice whatever faith that they want, and as long as you're not hurting anybody. So I think, and anyone out there who has faith, I'm happy for you. I support you in that endeavor. However, like for me, it was incredibly um, damaging mentally in my experience because I felt like something was wrong with me, and I just had to trust God. And then it was like not getting better, and then it was like, well, God, why don't you care? I mean, so as a young kid, you go through all this stuff, and when I finally was diagnosed with depression in my early 20s, I just was kind of like, well, it is what it is. This is just me. I have to make the decision every single day if I want to live like this. So that was almost like the acceptance phase, right? Where I'm like, it is what it is. But then as I got older and I realized, like, I don't want to live like this. Like, I can't live like this. And I actually suck out therapy. I was probably 30 or 31 years old. I'm 38 now. Well, maybe a little older. I was probably 32. But anyway, I started, realizing the benefits of that and sharing the benefits of that. And I hid my depression. So when I finally started talking about it, it was very challenging. It was a hard stigma to overcome. And to this day, I mean, I have a reel that I just recorded, and I'm like, do I really want to like deal with the comments of this, even though I'm trying to help people? Like, I just don't So it's an ongoing battle, every day for me, as it is for so many people. And before the show, I was in the best shape I've ever been in from a mental health perspective. I was, feeling very successful in my career. I had, recently, within the last year and a half, purchased a condo, which had always been a goal of mine here in Chicago. I had everything in my life going the way that I had worked so hard and expected it and wanted it to be. I was just missing someone to share it with. And
Mm.
so, I could sit here and critique dating all day. I think everybody knows it sucks at this point, but I thought maybe this experiment could work. And I was completely of the mindset that if I go into this and I get married and fall in love and get married, cool. If I go into this and the first day I'm like, none of the women are a good match for me, and I'm not a good match for them, or whatever that is, like I'm fine going home day one too. But as you go through it, you don't even realize the level of manipulation that's happening, and the basic step-by-step process they have, where they strip away your humanity, they strip away slowly your sanity in a sense, and it just becomes this constant, like, psychological torture, where you're not sleeping, you're not getting fed adequate food or water. You are being filmed 18 to 20 hours a day. They are taking, you get one tiny little break when the union crews swap out, and during that time you're still mic'd, so they're still collecting audio, so they can do what they want with that. And so you're just constantly in this pressure cooker environment, and then you go back to the hotel for your 6 hours or whatever it ends up being, and your adrenaline's pumping, and you're like, oh my god, I'm making life altering decisions every single day of narrowing down who you want to be with. Do you want to get engaged to this person? Do you like them after you see them? Do you want to um get physical with the relationship? Do you want to go back home? What are the family and friends going to think? And it's just this, are we going to get married? It's
Mhm.
just this giant pressure cooker that just keeps building with bigger and bigger decisions. And by the end, you're just kind of left with this, like, depleted version of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's before the show even comes out. So it only, yeah, it only becomes more of a challenge from there. And that's what I think people don't really understand, the mental toll. And people look at it like, well, I would do it better, or I would be able to handle it, or you signed up for it. And it's like, you really, unless you experience it, you don't get a voice in the conversation if your entry point is you signed up for it.
Yeah. Wow, I can't even begin to add putting yourself out there publicly in an already a vulnerable situation, which is dating, period. You're very
Right.
vulnerable in that space. On top of that, you're open to comments, you're open to criticism just by being in the public. And you've got anxiety and depression on top of all of that. So uh, did was there any sort of help for you mentally while you were filming the show at all?
They claim there was, but there was none while we were filming. I talked to my personal therapist once we got back from our trip to Mexico, which was 3 weeks. But I'm coming back engaged. I'm coming back tired. I'm coming back 15 pounds lighter than I went in. And I'm filming 5 days a week, and sometimes it's even more on the weekends. And we're back working our job. You can't be prepped for it. You just can't be prepped for it. And the fact that people in the public take it so seriously, that was like the most
Yeah.
crazy thing to me. Like, how serious people take this, knowing, or maybe not knowing, that it's entertainment. And I just remember, like, I was a little worried. I'm pretty confident myself. I didn't feel like I behaved out of character at all while we were filming. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't really care what these people think. And the reality is, I don't really care what people think. Like, I'm me, and I'm doing the best I can, and I'm trying to make the world a better place in the areas that I think I can have an influence. And I just didn't know that would be so polarizing.
Yeah. It's incredible to learn all this. So, I mean, if they didn't really offer as much, while you're filming, while you're on set, you had Danielle at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you still are somewhat, you're in a respectable civil place with her now. I actually
Yeah.
applaud that. Like you guys have spoken about your own experience for the betterment of others so that they can hear this story as well. So was she a good person to lean on if you weren't getting help elsewhere? Was she somewhat of a support for you while you both are going through this?
You really have to try and support each other through it,
Yeah.
because you're going, when you're with someone and you're going through it together, and we were going through it together from like day 3 or 4. You're going through it together. You really don't have much of a choice, and nobody else understands it except you. And that's the case with anything, right? No one knows your experience, but you know your experience. So don't let anyone else tell you what your experience was like. But together, like, there is so much going on. Like, you don't really have a choice. I don't want to say you're trauma bonded per se, but you're kind of trauma bonded,
Mm,
in that way of like, hey, we're going through this together. We're the only ones that know what this is like. Like, you have to lean on each other. But at the same time, she's going through the same thing, and you got to take care of your own house before you go help somebody else with theirs.
yeah. We forget that, especially when we're in the middle of a depressive or an anxious episode. I mean, that's what
So
landed
true.
me like my job was what landed me to suicidal ideation as well a couple of years
Mm,
ago. And it took it's unfortunate that it takes that, but sometimes it does.
yeah.
Many of us, it takes us being driven to that point to really sit down and say, something's wrong and something's got to change. Something, we need treatment, we need medication, whatever it is, we need to explore that. So, while
Right.
watching your conversation with Danielle in your own podcast, you mentioned very briefly, I think it's TMS treatment that
Yeah.
you've experimented, is has that been successful for you? What is that for anybody that doesn't know?
Yeah, so man, I finished it like a year ago, so I don't remember what the TMS stands for, but give me a second, I'll find that. But basically, it's a magnetic treatment that stimulates the part of your brain
Mhm.
that um, lacks stimulation, which can lead to depressive symptoms. There's also a different version of it that works for anxiety. That version is not covered by insurance for anyone asking, but
Mm.
traditional depression, or I'm sorry, traditional TMS treatment for depression is covered by most insurance companies. So what's interesting is it just feels like you get a head device. It just feels like someone's tapping on your head for, I think it was 15 minutes, if I remember correctly, and it's supposed to stimulate that part of the brain. And I it's weird because I do think it had an impact, but the fact that I was like doing it while going through a divorce and losing my job and all of this stuff, I'm like, these world events are just coming at me a mile a minute. Like, I don't know if this is if it's like my situation, because you get situational depression on top of normal depression, and then you got this treatment going on. It was hard for me to measure, but overall, I do think that it benefited me in a positive way. I think my baseline of low is a little bit higher than it was before that, at the very least.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that's good. It's glad we found something that worked.
And I'm gonna give me one second. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
TMS treatment. It stands for well, of course. Sorry, this is so
That's okay. We got time.
transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's
Okay.
what it stands for. Yeah.
Interesting. Because I hadn't heard of it before you mentioning it, to be honest. And I was like, first off, I'm gonna take notes for myself. Second off,
Yeah, it's one of those treatments that's been, proven to be effective by and large. And again, it's been a while, so I forget the exact numbers. I used to be able to run them off like crazy out of my mouth. But the treatments themselves are scientifically proven, FDA approved. It's not some quack science that's out there. So I do recommend that if you have the capability and the means and you suffer from depression, you give it a shot if it's within your means.
yeah, try it. Well, so I remember that when I was going through a pretty heavy episode, that one of the clues that told me something was serious was when I started crying when I would put my shoes on to go to work, because
I'm
I just
sorry.
that environment was the worst.
What did
And
you do, if you don't mind me asking?
I worked in radio and entertainment.
Oh, well, there it is.
But it was similar in the fact that I mean, I do this for fun now. This is purely my own entity. I have a
Yeah.
normal 8 to 5 now. And I do this for fun because I enjoy it and because I want to spread the message and erase the stigma, much like you do too. So, but what similar to your experience, we were on call all the time. We were expected to be peppy and ready within seconds.
Yeah.
And make ourselves honestly look like jackasses when we really didn't want to. And just do the stupidest things when it comes to promotion, things that made you that sometimes went against your own values. And when I
Mhm.
started saying no, then I got pushback. And then I
Yeah.
started to get scared that I would lose that job security. And if I lose that job security, I mean, depression, it spirals
You,
from there.
oh
If I
yeah.
lose the job, then I lose financial security. If I lose financial security, I can't support my husband. He'll hate me now. And then it just
Yeah.
goes, it
That's
goes,
exactly it. You spiral.
yeah,
There's no way not to.
it just goes worse and worse and worse. And I hit a wall when I started crying about it and when I wanted to reach for pills and just not wake up the next day. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh my gosh. I'm
So,
so sorry.
yeah, but unfortunately, I didn't know that I had a problem until then. So I'm wondering if you had a similar moment where you realized, wow, this show really impacted me, maybe even more than
I
I thought
do.
it did.
I do. I've been living with it a lot again. And last year, after the divorce, the leaking of the divorce, all of the consequences that came from that, being misrepresented and negatively spoken about in the media, losing my job partially because of that.
Mm,
Um, and then Dr. Isabel, who's on the UCAN Foundation board of director as director of mental health services, was writing an article based on the impacts reality TV was having on people's wellness, right? Their mental health. And so I did a very long interview with her, and I just went from, and this is the first time I had really started processing it, was I remember it was December 22nd. I went through from the moment they DM'd me on LinkedIn to ask me if I was interested in being on the show, all the way up to how I was feeling in that moment and all of the experiences I had been through and all the trauma that I had been through. And that was when I was like, I felt like I hit rock bottom.
mm,
And I mentally, I shut down social media. I avoided so much of the holiday stuff at the time, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I don't want to be in the public eye. I don't want to. I want my life that I had built for myself before this came in and just uprooted it and destroyed it.
yeah,
And I everything I had worked for, my career, everything was just gone. And then the fear, the financial fear you just mentioned, that all started setting in. And I was at rock bottom. I didn't want to do it. And I said, I'm done. I'm done with all of this. I muted every single person from the show, most of which, like, with the exception of Shane, like never reached out to me or anything. No condolences on the divorce, on any of it. So I was just like, these these times are this life isn't for me. And so I just kind of started doing my own thing. I stopped stressing so much about social media, and I turned down all the interviews of, let's catch up with Nick and see if he's dating, see what he's up to, all of that stuff. I just turned them down. And then the Business Insider article that came out in April that sort of kickstarted the foundation. I told Jeremy no about the foundation. Jeremy, my co-founder, he
yeah.
wanted me to jumpstart this with him. I said, nope, I'm out. I'm out of all of this. And then the Business Insider article opportunity came, or interview came. And I saw the DM and I thought about it, and it was going to be an expose on Love is Blind and the, basically psychological torture that ensues from that. And I was sitting there and I said to myself, I'm like, I've always been someone who feels like I need to stand up for what's right. You go to my LinkedIn and it says in my headline, here's all the professional stuff, but do the right thing. Like, you do the
Mhm.
right thing by people first and foremost. And I'm like, somebody should be saying something. And if somebody's gonna say something, maybe I should say something. Because if not me, who? If
Right.
no one's going to address the labor exploitation, the mental health exploitation, and like really tackle it from a systemic pop. Like, who's going to do it? If not me, who? And I was like, this is, fighting for change, standing up for what's right. That is in my DNA. I have no other. I have no other way to approach things. And so I decided, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go in. And I put myself right back in the belly of the beast. Got the media misrepresenting me, all sorts of stuff, because they don't want to have these conversations, by and large, about unionization in reality TV, because it's so, so cheap to produce, and everybody in Hollywood's on strike, and so it's been quite the unique predicament to find myself in. But you know what? It's much more on brand. I've been organizing since 2008. I've worked locally in political campaigns, nationally in political campaigns for candidates. I've organized in other ways in my community to get change, and this just feels a little more on brand maybe than Nick, the reality TV star.
Yeah, totally. I would love to hear more about You Can Too, because Jeremy also from season two. So I didn't know the story. He sort of initially approached you about this organization that essentially does advocate for reality stars, for anybody that doesn't know.
That's exactly right. And he wanted to start this, and he wanted to do it from like getting legal perspective and labor perspective, which I'm on board with. But I didn't think, I was going through my mental health stuff. Like, I
Yeah.
just didn't even, I told my therapist last night, actually, I'm like, I'm very proud of myself because I took a week away last week and I didn't do anything you can do. And I started to feel more like myself, which I haven't felt in years. And I remember I'm like, you know what? Like, I told her, I'm like, I'm really proud of myself because like I had days where I spiraled. I had moments where I spiraled. I cried, and I'm not really a crier, even when I'm sad. I just don't, it's just not, and I cried a lot, and I didn't completely fall off. Like, I kept the course, and I put structure in place, even though I had no structure in my life. Because I know that's important to me. So it is, it just became very evident to me that like the mental, and seeing, other people and stuff, and knowing what it did to Danielle, knowing what it did to myself, knowing what it did to our relationship, I just couldn't, I just couldn't let people just be exploited, damaged permanently, knowing that I didn't get a bad at it. I didn't, and I don't feel right. And I feel like this was awful. So, I did come around on it, obviously. And, the advocate for change, where we are connecting reality cast members with mental health professionals. I just found out in our last meeting, we have over 600 that now have
Wow.
signed up. We're getting like 15, 20 new ones a week. We have, I think 30, 40 entertainment lawyer firms that have reached out and have offered to be of assistance and help us out. And then we're advocating for change in the industry. I'm working very closely with organizers. I'm working closely with More Perfect Union, working very closely with SAG-AFTRA and the Teamsters, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way that we can advocate for change and get some regulation around people to just once again protect human beings.
Yeah. What have you learned about advocating? What have you found has been the best way to get the message out?
I think the best way to get the message out is just get people to tell their story. Because for every Nick, every Danielle, every other person, there's 100 behind them that went through damages, emotional and physical, and they were not given any kind of platform. And those are the people that need the support and need the protection, because I can come out and talk about it to my 300,000 followers and get the opportunities to go into the media or come on shows like yours here and share my story. But like, there's so many people that don't get that opportunity, and we're all scared of the NDAs, and everyone's getting threatened left and right by lawyers if they start to speak out. So we're working very closely. Like, can you really NDA someone's, we've already learned in society, you can't NDA someone when you abuse them. So, why is that still applying here? So I think that's the most important thing that we can do right now is create awareness.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you have found different forms of treatment that have worked for you. I mean, especially since then, we talked about TMS. It sounds like you're in therapy as well. What else
Yep.
has worked for you as far as taking care of your own mental health?
Spending time outside is the number one thing for me. I don't care if it's, I mean, there's obviously a point where it gets too cold. I'm in Chicago, but
Yeah.
you know, I like to move and get outside and take in the sun as much as I can. And I think that has been one of the other things that's just very very beneficial for me.
Yeah. In general, what's next for you? What are you looking forward to? Whether it's you can, anything.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to continue to advocate for change in the industry. We need basic labor protections. You know, I'm going to continue to advocate for mental health, not just in reality TV, because you know that's very important, but just in the real world as well. You know, it's been a journey for me to be comfortable enough to talk about it. It's been a journey for me to talk about it to people close to me, and now talk about it to the world. So I'm going to continue to grow there, be a voice for the voiceless whenever possible. And ultimately, I am very determined to change this industry for the better and get people some basic protections around their mental health and their labor.
Yeah, and open our eyes to some of the things that we have no clue behind the scenes. I mean, I think the more
Exactly.
the general public learns about that, the more we're appalled and we want to say
Exactly.
something too. Like
Well, and I appreciate that advocacy from people. Like share these stories, share the podcast, share the interviews, share the articles. I just think a lot of people don't know.
yeah, not at all. But I would appreciate you sharing your story and being as vulnerable as you have been. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being with me today.
It was my pleasure, Val. Thank you.